Hello, I'm Jake Valancourt with 10X Engineered Materials.
I'm Jacob Magner, and I run Encrypted Coatings here in Jackson, Michigan.
So, Jake, it's good to finally meet you. It's been years we've been talking, and then COVID happened, so we would have done this a long time ago, but life got in the way.
Yep.
One of the things that we want to talk about is how to start a business, specifically how to start a powder coating business.
Oh, yeah.
But before we jump into that and any of the details, I think it's actually important, as someone who's started 2 businesses now, should you start a business?
Yeah.
So, Jake, what do you think about that?
I mean, there's so many hurdles to get over. I always ask myself, is it worth the stress? Because a lot of people, a lot of people have this idea or this ideology of like, hey, I don't want to be working for anybody else.
Right.
But the reality behind it is, if you start up a business, you are now working for hundreds of other people, depending on what industry you're in. So there is a lot of challenges to starting a business, and if you can handle the stress, I say go for it. You get a lot of freedom, but also a lot of stress. Yeah,
I think there's this almost myth and this wonderful American dream, and not just in America, all over the world. If I start a business, I'm going to be free, and maybe, but you actually might be less free than if you didn't start a business, depending on how it goes. Yep. It's really, to me, the first question is, well, why do you want to start a business?
Yeah.
If there's something that you're interested in, that you're passionate about, and you want to further develop, that can also be able to help other people, produce a profit for yourself, or the rest of the business, okay, that makes sense. But if it's just simply, well, I don't like my boss, or I don't like this, or don't do something because you don't like something else.
Right.
Do something because you have some passion, there's real love there, there's energy. And the reason I say that is, doing this, starting a business, is one of the hardest things in the world you could ever decide to do.
Yeah.
And unless you're completely committed and have that passion to carry you past the really tough parts, you're going to struggle. You may not make it.
Yeah.
So
you have to love what you do.
Exactly.
You have to love it so much to where when, say, people that work for you don't love it that much, you have to love it for them,
right,
to continue the growth.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of challenges,
So that's the first question to ask yourself, is why? And if you have a why where you believe no matter what, you can commit to carrying it through and actually doing it, then I say go for it. It makes total sense. If you don't have that why, you can be really happy. And some of my best friends would never be a business owner. So I appreciate the open and candid conversation, but I just wanted to get that out of the way, because I feel like we really needed to nail that, and at least address kind of the elephant in the room before we start talking about the how. So figure out the why first, and if the why is there, it's solid, stay for the rest and watch the how.
Yeah, because running your own business is not for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's say you've decided that you do want to start a business, and it just so happens that you want to start a powder coating business. We're going to use this as an example in this video. So to start a powder coating business, the first thing you need to really think about is, well, safety. That's huge for me, especially if you're looking at maybe bringing employees down the road. It's always good to start with safety. Proper protection, just PPE. Different types of clothing that you might have to wear in the shop.
So you got safety, you got PPE, you need insurance, license, registration, all that fun stuff. Yeah, so
I think to
just start and open a basic business, you need to decide what form of business you're going to be. Yeah. We're not going to go into all of that here, but basically find yourself a professional tax advisor who can walk you through that.
Yeah.
Once you figure that out, you need a business name, and believe it or not, you can't just name it anything. You got to make sure it's available in your state. So those are some of the basics, the nuts and bolts. And then when it comes to, are you going to be starting a powder coating business that's a sole proprietor, no employees, or you're going to start with employees? You might need some structural stuff depending on that. If you're going to be batch processing, or you're going to have a continuous production line, there's a huge difference in investment and equipment around that answer. And you really need to decide first, what is the market that you need to serve? What are you going to be doing? And then you can answer the question of how I should be doing that. You want to build a business model so you can actually understand your cost structure and make sure that you're going to be able to have a profitable business. So why don't we talk a little bit first about the easier version of a powder coating business to start, or maybe not easier, but less expensive. That's more likely that a sole proprietor would get started with.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in my group on Facebook, that's like one of the biggest questions for a new guy to ask is, what do I need to start powder coating? And a lot of guys just want to do the garage coating. And when I say garage coating, I mean like the bare minimum to get you by. So the first thing would be a decent powder coating gun. A lot of guys will skimp out on that, and the better gun you start with, the better your business will flow. It'll make things a lot easier, and it'll help you, tackle those jobs that might be a lot harder than others, like ones that may have deeper recesses or Faraday areas. 2 is an oven. This one can get very expensive very fast. Ovens can range all the way from an easy bake oven up to a $80,000 oven. So there's a huge range to look at. But if you're just starting out, what a lot of guys will do is they'll take just a home range that they might find on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, cut it up on the inside and just have that one element exposed, build a little rack in it, and there you go. You can start out doing small parts, which is actually what I did. I started in a toaster oven. Back in 2008, I started in a toaster oven doing brake levers for four-wheelers and selling them on Marketplace. And now my company does stuff for John Deere, Case New Holland. We do some Tesla parts. So there's definitely a huge, broad range of things that you can start and get to. The next thing would be sandblasting. Now, if you're just starting out, maybe use one of your local sandblasters, because there's a lot of them out there. Now, the other thing with sandblasting is if you do decide to do it in-house, material is a huge, huge, huge undertaking. There's so many different materials on the market, and in my group on Facebook, we've gone through thousands of different types of material. And Jake, I'm not just saying this because you're here. We landed on 10X Engineered Materials. It works and it lasts, especially like garage coaters that are, say, doing it in an in-house cabinet. When you have employees or even just yourself, you want to use a very safe material, and you want to use a material that cuts really nice to give you a really good finish, because when you're starting out, your end product needs to be perfect. It has to, every time. You cannot let bad stuff get out, unless you're just doing it for buddies, and then they understand, right? But you're not making money at that point. So those are some of the key items that you want to make sure you have outside of just like a general respirator.
We'll talk a little bit about equipment. So before we get into the blasting equipment, you were talking about how if you have a powder coated gun that's low quality, low cost, you end up paying for that in terms of what you can actually produce, how quickly you can produce it, and your cost to produce that. You won't be able to get the bigger, higher dollar stuff if you have lower quality materials, equipment, whether it comes to blasting or coating, even your oven. If you have a really small oven, you're only going to be able to do a certain size part. So you got to really think about that. And I would say, if you create a whole business model and you look at the cost to start up, you don't want to make the cost to start up into the category where it's just impossible because the cost is so high. But you also don't want to make everything so low cost that it's almost not worth it. You're barely going to be able to eat and get by as a business owner. So you really got to be careful with that, where if we're going to start this and you're going to take the risk and you're going to jump in and do it right. Research first, talk to other business owners. This is a quite an impressive community that you've built up on Facebook. There's no reason that you have to do it all alone and think through everything on your own. But my biggest piece of advice, once you've decided to start a business, is don't skimp. You will end up being less profitable, and your chance of success is a lot lower if you can't actually get to profitability quickly.
Yeah.
And it takes money to make money. So if you have to get a bank loan, whatever it may be, I'd much rather be working in a business where we're going to do that than just start with friends and family or what savings we have, unless you're really lucky and you hit the lottery or something.
Yeah.
Either way, don't skimp, because you're going to end up getting yourself into essentially a corner where you have limited options to get to profitability if you don't start out right out of the bat with the good stuff, right? The good equipment, the good materials, all of that. So keep that in mind.
And to touch base on, pricing, that's another huge feat with having a business, right? A lot of guys will get into it and they'll just look at, how can I make a little bit of money off of this? Well, that might not be what you should be doing, because market might be a lot more than what you're thinking. There's guys that'll get on there and they'll ask, for example, what should I be charging for a 20-inch set of wheels? And the pricing will literally range from $100 all the way up to $5,000. I mean, it's wild. And I know that there's a location-based pricing. People in California may pay a little more than over here in Michigan. But I think a general rule of thumb is, if you're looking at margins and stuff, you really should be charging at a minimum, and this is 2024 during the shooting of this. I think $575 for a set of 20-inch wheels is like bare minimum, especially with how we've seen inflation and all that. Powder's gone up, everything is more money. And if you're wanting the better powder, the better media, and the better finished product, you have to also make your pricing according to that. And from what I've found, being that we've done, like last year, over 300 sets of wheels, it works.
Congratulations, by the way. That's impressive.
It works. When you output really good quality stuff, people are willing to pay a little more, and you start getting into the more higher end clients, with the higher end cars, and even, the older school cars, that they want perfection. They will pay a little extra for perfect, finish. And I think that's where a lot of guys drop the ball off the bat. They're just like, how cheap can I get this through? I've seen things from people not even sandblasting, just sanding the substrate or the coating that's currently on it, and then just hot flocking over it. And then it might be good for that person when they pick up, but I guarantee you in 3 weeks, they're going to be mad about that product you gave them. So there's a lot of things that go into this.
And when you're building a business, don't think about just building the actual structure of the business. You have to develop a business model, and what you're talking about is, are you going to be doing, how are you going to figure out your pricing? These are all things to figure out in your business model first. And my approach would be maybe different than yours or some other people, I don't know, but my approach would be, let's have a cost plus basis as a minimum, meaning, okay, we know it's going to cost us, say it's a set of 20-inch wheels or rims for a car, and you know that you're going to be spending at least X amount to get that job done. That's awesome to have that in the model. I'm always going to operate at a certain percentage of margin. So say it's $300 of cost, just round numbers, you want to be at least at a 30-40% margin. All right, then you have to do the math and make sure that your minimum price for that job is actually in that margin range that you're willing to work in. If you don't do that, if you don't come up with a cost basis, you may end up doing jobs where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure if we even made money on this. And just don't set yourself up for that. So figure out your cost basis. And then of course, when you get into more exotic applications or things where you're not sure, say it's going to be, like you said, you have a big customer, Case New Holland. Well, all right, give us a sample run, and we're going to just work with you by the hour for a day or maybe a week or whatever. We're not sure what we can do for you on pricing, but give us a shot. You at least cover your cost, and then you develop, okay, I can do this for X. You bring it to the customer, you say, hey, this is what I can do. If that's in the range, great, let's strike a deal. If it's not, hey, at least you didn't lose and I didn't lose in the process. So there's ways to come up with different opportunities where you don't kind of get caught with, being in an unprofitable situation, but you also may not know the answer. I think a lot of people get that uncertainty and that fear of, hey, we're not sure what to price this at. So I don't know where to start. So I'm going to pick a number, and now you're kind of stuck with something where it may or may not work.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to run my business that way. Have you got any advice on that?
I mean, no, yeah. So prior to doing my own thing, I ran a tier 1 plating company, and we did a lot of cost models. I mean, there's thousands of parts, and I think the biggest thing a lot of guys don't do is just, I mean, I literally have had close family that have started a business and they just didn't sit down and actually do the numbers and figure out, hey, what do I really need to be charging, not what does my customers want me to charge.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, if you can't charge what you have to charge, then it's not going to work anyways. So sit down, do the cost model, figure out your margins. Most industrials is right around 30% margin, but honestly, powder is usually a higher margin than that.
Right.
I've seen 80% margins from other companies that have allowed me to see what they do. I've actually seen higher than that even, but yeah, so it is important to sit down and actually spend the time and figure out what you need to charge.
So we'll talk first about PPE for blasting. Mm-hmm. If you're blasting not in an enclosed cabinet, our recommendation is always follow OSHA. They want you to be in a forced hood respirator, so you're actually forcing fresh breathing air in, and you need to have full protection on yourself, hearing protection as well. Obviously, with yourself being under a hood, your eyes are obviously protected as well. That's what OSHA says. There's a lot of dangerous materials out there for blasting. 10X is not one of them, but you also don't know what you're blasting off. There could be lead, there could be all kinds of stuff in there. So follow the recommendations from OSHA to the T for blasting. There's no reason not to.
Yeah, don't skimp on that. That's one thing that I've seen way too many times in the group.
Our abrasive that we make at 10X, which is made in Indiana, by the way, 100% US owned company, made in the USA. We're very proud of that.
That's awesome.
But the material is mineral wool insulation. Mineral wool's been around for over 100 years. And back in the day, there was a bunch of lawyers going after asbestos manufacturers, insulation manufacturers, because asbestos would cause people to die if you inhaled it. And when they went and looked at mineral wool, it was figured out in pretty short order, hey, this material is super safe. And the reason is simple. It's a biosoluble material. So if it gets into your lungs, deep in your lungs, even in the insulation form, not just the abrasive form, your body can dissolve it in just a few days and it causes absolutely no harm. And that's proven. There's an IARC monograph on it from the World Health Organization, and it is considered as safe as coffee and tea. I hate to scare people, but the truth is, if you look at the other abrasives on the market, none of them have an IARC monograph, and the data that's available on them it's frightening. I mean, it's not favorable. It shows that it can cause real damage if you inhale that. So
before you guys comment too, not to interrupt you, but before you guys comment, please go look. Don't just keyboard warrior it. Just like for real, go look, because 10X is actually, they care. I mean, I know Jake is affiliated with 10X, but they do. I mean, why else would they spend the money to go have that done?
Right.
So
yeah, it's the research is there. It's solid. It's the safest high performance abrasive in the world, and so that's part of why Jake recommends it. So many other companies recommend it, and some companies will only allow that to be used when you're blasting for safety reasons. Some other companies have quality reasons why they only allow our products, but we'll get into that later. As far as PPE, when it comes to powder coating, I think you should talk about the minimum, right? Like, don't do it without this.
Yeah, respirator, which we can show you. Let me grab one real quick. All right, so this is the respirator that we use when we're spraying powder. Honestly, this is even a bit of overkill, because powder, you could even use a standard mask. I've seen it before, like almost like an N95. But this is what I would recommend, and I'm sure a lot of guys would recommend using something like this. Now we date ours and we change them out every 4 months, I believe is the schedule Whitney has us on. So we'll change these filters out every 4 months. That might be an overkill too.
It's a NIOSH. Which one is that?
Yeah, this is the, we use it also because it's an acid one.
Oh, okay.
So again, this is probably an overkill, but this is the 6003 NIOSH one.
Yep. don't skimp on safety. You only have one life to live, so
Yeah.
let's not make it shorter, right?
Yeah.
All right, so that covers PPE.
Cool.
So we're going to talk a little bit about materials, material quality. There's a range, and I think
Yeah.
the biggest mistake I see out there is people say, "Oh, this brand is great. I'm going to use everything that they make, and I'm not going to use anything else."
Yeah.
Why would you make that choice? I mean, there's going to be some companies are going to be great at some things, and they may not be great at some other things, and they may not even be offering a particular color, for example. So,
Yeah.
I say don't put yourself in a corner. Again, options are there for a reason, and explore, find out what works well for this particular application in this particular color range, and run with that.
Yeah.
And it's not always going to be the same forever either. So always be open to learning about new materials, new processes, new methods, that sort of thing. What do you think about powder?
Well, like you had mentioned, there's a lot of different brands, a lot of different powders, and what I've personally found is each company makes at least something better than the other company. I don't know if it's they focus on one thing or what it is, what their model is, but don't just listen to what other people say too. Go out and do your trial and error and figure out what works best for you, because I've even seen some guys use different guns and certain powders spray through different guns better. I don't know if it has to do with like the material makeup or what. I'm not sure on that, but like certain companies make gloss blacks that flow out a lot smoother, and some companies make gloss blacks that are a lot more durable and scratch resistant, but might not flow out as good. So there's a lot of different colors, a lot of different manufacturers, and a lot of them make a lot of different styles. So, yeah.
And then when it comes to equipment, let's say we'll talk a little bit about blasting first, because generally we do that before we powder coat. I hope.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just saying.
I hope.
So compressors, plumbing, and air quality. I'm going to kind of give you a quick rundown.
Yeah.
First thing you want to do is answer the question, what do I need to be able to blast? So how much and how quickly?
Yeah.
Now, if you want to blast, say, 100 square feet an hour or more, don't come to the job with, don't bring a knife to a gunfight, right? If you come to that job and say, I'm going to use a 25 CFM compressor, you're kidding yourself. It's not possible. You need the right tools. So don't undersize your air compressor. If you're not sure how to size it for blasting, you can go to the 10X website, product support page has all that. I think some of that information is on the forum as well.
It is.
And of course, you can always reach out to 10X for free. We provide that type of guidance at no charge. You don't want to undersize your connections, you don't want to undersize your air dryer, and you don't want to not account for other air demands. So if that compressor is going to be powering your powder operation, and it's also going to be powering a air for your hood, you got to count all that up. It's not like, hey, I'm just blasting and that's all I'm using. No, you're using the air for other things. So you need to know how much you need for everything, and then make sure you can get to the pressure that's necessary for the speed you want to go. And with 10X, the higher the pressure, the faster the blasting. It's that simple. So don't undersize your compressor. When we talk about equipment, let's talk a little bit about the gun. I know we talked a bit about that, but going into more detail, right? If you go with a cheap gun, you're kind of short-sighted decision already, because now you're going to be stuck in a certain quality range, or you may not even be able to do certain kinds of parts. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. When you're first, looking for a powder coating gun, there's a lot of different options out there, and if you're in the group on Facebook, you'll see there's thousands of different guns, from ones that are over in China that have, they say they can adjust the amps and kilovolts. They have injection and dilution. There's a lot of phrases I'm throwing out, but if you're just starting, okay, I think my all-time favorite personal gun would be a Cool Coat system. And Columbia Coatings makes these, and the reason why I say this gun is because you can achieve a really good finish with it. It might not be the best for like super deep recess areas, but for what you pay for this gun, it is a really, really good gun. A lot of guys will use like the Redline EZ. We stay away from the PCS 1000. However, Eastwood they are coming out or have came out with a new gun. I have not personally got to use it. I've got to use, all the Gimas, Wagners, Parker Ionics. I've used tons of different guns, as well as I have a few different ones. My favorite, I actually have two Semez Kremlin Inokart VTs, and the reason I have two of them is I loved the first one so much that I decided that I needed a backup one if anything was to go wrong. Now, we've sprayed, hundreds of thousands of parts, actually probably close to 1 million parts with the gun we currently have, which is the Inokart VT, and it just keeps going. It's an amazing gun, but that is not for a entry-level person, because you have to know how to adjust amps, kilovolts based off of the configuration of part you're spraying. I don't want to go in too much detail with that because it can confuse a lot of people really quick and kind of make them like, I don't even want to do this. Like, if I have to learn all that, there's different densities of powder that you might have to inject and dilute a little different than others. Even to like flakes, where you're like, okay, a metallic flake, you wouldn't think that you need to up the kilovolts to 100, but you do, because to get good coverage. Again, I don't want to get in too far with that, but a good gun to start with, if you're considering starting in a good budget, I think, would be right around $2,000 for an entry-level gun. So there's some options out there. Me personally, I'd look at the Cool Coat systems.
All right, cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about location.
All right.
If you're running a business or you're going to start a business, you need somewhere to do that. Yeah. This is not a virtual business. You have to do a real thing,
yes,
and you need the space to do that.
Location, location. Yeah. So we've gone through ups and downs with location. It's very important that you look at a space. Okay, so let's say you are looking at a building, for example, and you're not just wanting to do it out of a garage. You're looking at a building and you walk in and you said, you think this is enough space? It's not. It is not enough space. You're gonna need more, because immediately you'll start getting parts in, and for us, we try to follow 16949, which is a standard of quality, and we have to have an incoming and outgoing, a quality area, a hold area. I mean, there's just a lot of things that you're like, wow, I didn't realize I needed all this extra space. So yeah, I think the minimum space to do a small size powder coating shop would be about 40 by 40. I really would, like, even then you're gonna be like probably utilizing outside, storage and stuff like that. Perfect space, I think, to do a mid-size would be like 108 by 80. So those are my two recommendations. Now, you're going to want to look at, are you going to do an electric oven or a gas oven? Because let's say you find a building and it's far away from the road. Well, you need to make sure that the pipeline coming in could even run a large size gas oven. And if not, you need to make sure you have enough current to do a full-size electric oven, which they use a lot of current.
Three-phase power.
Yeah, I mean, some you could use like a phase converter, and I mean, there's ways around that, but yeah, I mean, you want to make sure your power source is accurate or adequate for what you want to do. And then you start getting into it, right? And you start thinking, man, I need this or that, and like tire machine. A lot of guys fabricating, it's important to have like a plasma table or a laser table. I mean, it adds up very, very rapidly. So you want to make sure you have enough amp service and enough natural gas or even propane. I really, really don't recommend propane ovens, because I've seen way too often the propane coming in is not always good quality, and it can leave defects in your finish.
It's also expensive.
It is very expensive, man. It is. Like,
I don't care what anybody says.
We looked at that.
Propane is expensive, man. I've seen the business models.
Yep. And then you also can get, certain credits, discounts in certain industrial areas. So that might be, this is for Michigan. I know Michigan, in certain areas you can get discounts on electric and all that if you're running a business. And then some areas you don't. But yeah, so there's definitely, you want to look at a lot of things when you're looking at a building. Now, as far as my group goes, there is a significant amount of guys that are doing the garage coating, which, powder, no VOCs. It's a very, very low, non-invasive, not very loud, especially if you have like a rotary screw compressor. People wouldn't even know you're doing it. It's that quiet. So you could do it at home. It could be a an at-home business, or you could even maybe go to your township and get approval to do it there. But yeah, so there's lots of different ways to do it. Even if you just want to do it as a hobby, doing it at home is easy. Please don't use the oven that you use to cook with. That will definitely kill you over time. So you want to make sure you have an isolated area, not in your house, to do it. Yeah.
We talked a little bit about proper business license paperwork, but maybe we run through that one more time. Let me see what we have on the website here. Check local regulations to ensure you get the necessary business license, environmental permits to run your business legally. Some states, that's tougher than others.
It is definitely.
You may need, and zoning, you want to make sure that you're not miszoned, right, or you'll get shut down. It's as simple as that. You've also got to keep in mind that don't miss those expenses in your initial budget. Because if you truly are starting from scratch, it does cost some money to get those things. And then business insurance. You want to make sure you know what your cost of insurance is going to be to start out of the gate. Because again, if you don't account for that, as soon as you want to hire somebody, if you don't have insurance, well, you're not going to be able to hire them.
I think that was one of the big things for me, was realizing how much insurance was going to be to run it where I'm running it. It's very expensive. I'm not going to put a number out there, but it was way more than I anticipated.
It's a real cost.
Yeah.
And trust me, you don't want to get caught without insurance. Something happens.
Especially with employees.
Yeah, then you're done.
You absolutely have to have it.
It's a must. It's not a want to have, it's a must.
Yep.
All right, so just to recap, first of all, before you start a business, should you, and what's your why? You don't want to just start a business because, hey, I don't like what I'm doing now. You've got to have passion. If you have passion, everything else can be figured out. But if you don't have passion for that, man, it gets really hard. You don't want to be caught out in the rain, out in the cold, where you've started up and then you're like, crap, I can't believe I did this. I just want a way out. So don't set yourself up for that. We talked about safety, we talked about equipment, we talked about materials, we talked about location, talked about insurance. There's a whole bunch of stuff. One thing we didn't really talk about yet is actually marketing. So depending on the customers you're going after, right, the market segment that you want to be serving, you're going to need a marketing plan that brings you customers from that segment. Because if you want to go to Case New Holland like Mr. Magner has here, I think if you just advertise on Facebook, you may not find them and they may not find you. You may not get a foot in the door. It's also all about networking. You want to be part of a community, a business community where you're networking with each other. You may not be able to help each other all the time, but time to time, you're going to be able to get a customer because somebody knows you. Half the battle is just being known. You want to be known before you're needed. And if you're known before you're needed, you've already got a leg up on the competition. So what do you think about marketing?
You hit the nail on the head with all of that. Just to digress a little bit, if you do decide to take this from like a garage, small, just doing it for your friends, into an actual business, hiring people, you have to take that idea out of your head that it might not succeed. Like, there is no option that it has to succeed. And then as far as marketing goes, there's a lot of guys that maybe shouldn't market themselves. There's a lot of rough around the edges guys, and there is ways around that, hiring people to market for you. Then there's a lot of guys that just can't use technology, and that's, it might just be a generational thing, but if you want your business to succeed, you need to make sure you're marketing well. There's a lot of different avenues, and there's a lot of different apps that allow you to use location-based marketing. Meaning, if you just want to market in your general area, you can do so. TikTok does that now. Facebook does it. Instagram does it. YouTube kind of does it, but it does throw it also a little bit broader to get more viewers. But yeah, I think marketing's important.
I'll add into Google Maps. I don't know about you.
Oh, I use those a lot.
But Maps if I need something, even if I'm on a trip, a business trip, personal trip, doesn't matter, I need something, the first place I'm going is Google Maps. I've got an iPhone. I don't care. I'm using Google Maps. So if you want to be available in a particular market, make sure you're on Google Maps. I mean, it sounds so simple, but I know so many businesses in this industry where they're not on Google Maps, and then they're frustrated that somebody didn't find them.
Yeah, which is wild.
And they went, miles and miles farther away than what they had to. And people just don't understand. It's like, hey, just get yourself on Google Maps. It's not that hard to do. I think it's free.
Yeah, it is free. Yep, they did change it. So it used to be to get verified and be able to have your business, they used to send out a card, and now they've changed it up. So I don't know exactly how to get verified. I know it's a lot harder than it used to be, but there's going to be challenges no matter what you do in business. So figure it out and do it. I'm telling you, Google is huge.
Yeah, it is. You got to get on there. All right, so we recapped everything. Essentially, this video was made to help folks who aren't sure, but they want to kind of think through whether or not this is for them. And whether it's a powder coating business or any other business, a lot of the advice that we're giving here is the same. Do it safely, make sure you do it right, and don't skimp on the startup. If you start up with the good quality stuff, you don't need the best, but definitely don't go for the cheapest. That higher first cost actually gives you that lower ongoing cost and the ability to get into higher margin projects as well. So don't skimp on it. Don't undersize your compressor. Don't get the cheapest powder gun out there, and don't buy the cheapest materials either. Safety, quality, all of it matters. And honestly, don't do it alone. There's a whole community here. This is an awesome group that you've built up over the years.
Free group,
and it's
a lot
free.
Of good information. Yep. I started this group just as I want to see other people succeed. I want to see other people being able to give their families good lives and all that. And there's definitely it's been a challenge running the group. There's a lot of spam that can get in there, and for a while there I was paying an entertainment company to help me mitigate some of that. But I want my group to be available for people to even just have a secondary source of income. Life's hard enough as it is, so hopefully it helps.
All right. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you visiting 10X website, powder coating forum, however you found this. And again, get involved. Find the group if you haven't already. Find 10xem.com and reach out for help whenever you need it.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.